This is Telling the Story, a podcast dedicated to exploring faith, spirituality, arts, and culture, hosted by Ninth Hour Theatre Company in Ottawa, Canada. Thank you for joining us for our podcast series about heroes and villains. Throughout the series, we'll talk with artists and special topical guests, discussing why heroes and villains capture the human need for moral clarity in determining what and who is good and evil. Heroes and villains in stories and literature, in war and conflict, in news and politics, and the ever-changing analysis of who are the heroes and villains in history. What makes our podcast unique is that you'll also get an insider's look into the many artistic and production decisions of a theater company in choosing which stories to tell, and what is involved in putting together a theatrical production. So, sit back and settle in for a stimulating dive into deep ideas and the world of theater magic. Okay, I'm super excited for this episode. Heroes and villains in stories and literature and in fiction. I'm joined by two amazing guests, returning guests to the Telling the Story podcast. I'm first joined by KAT IRVINE. KAT is a theater artist, having recently been dramaturge for Ninth Hour's 2025 production of Babette's Feast. They graduated from York University with an honors Bachelor of Arts degree in performance creation and research, a minor in English, and a 2-year academic specialization in new play dramaturgy.
Nerd alert.
What haven't you done, KAT?
Oh my gosh.
KAT then graduated from St. Lawrence College with an Ontario College Advanced Diploma in Musical Theatre Performance.
Yes.
Welcome, KAT.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm
Of
pumped.
course, my pleasure. And it sounds like you're just the person for the job
Oh,
today.
thank you.
Yeah. And we're also joined by another guest returning to the podcast, Adam Barrows. Adam is a theater artist and recently performed in Ninth Hour's 2025 production of Babette's Feast. He's also performed recently with Elevator Theatre Company, Phoenix Players, and Lost Baggage Musical Theatre in Ottawa. He has been a professor of English literature at Carleton University since 2009. Again, Adam, welcome, and so good to have you.
Thanks. Great to be back. Thank you.
What a great topic for you both. Heroes and villains in stories, literature, fiction, of which they're abundant. And the list is too long, as a matter of fact.
It's limitless, it feels like.
So limitless. Let's start with maybe like a simple question to just dig in. Like, do you have favorites? Like, do you have favorite heroes, favorite villains in any stories that you've read over the years or written about in your studies or just for pleasure? Yeah, like tell me some of your favorite heroes are, Adam, or villains. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I it's changed over time, right? When I was growing up, I would have thought James Bond was my hero. In fact, I think even in high school, they said bring in an example of a heroic person.
Oh.
And everybody was so much more sophisticated than me. And they brought in examples of people in the community who'd done great. I was like, James Bond, because he's cool, like very simple idea.
Like, what are these people talking about?
Yeah.
Like, just go straight to the point. James Bond.
Yeah. But fictional heroes, well, Doctor Who's always been my hero. I'm a huge Doctor Who fan. I watch it all the time, watching it with my wife. So I like Doctor Who. He's that, anarchical, figure who just sort of drops from out of nowhere and
does he travel through
things
time?
Like time traveler, international, intergalactic space traveler.
Wow.
So people like that, who are just, almost comic book heroes.
Right.
I enjoy them,
And he would like if he's traveling in time and through space, he could come across. I've never seen it. I know.
You're missing out. It's
I know.
Great. It's fabulous.
I'm aware of it, but I haven't ever gotten into it. But I love science fiction. I love things like that. But I could understand that you could probably get into any scenario.
Yeah,
yes.
Beautifully flexible. He can go, but he goes back and meets Genghis Khan, and he goes into the future and meets intergalactic dictators, and he's usually helping people fight off oppressors. It's this kind of thing.
Okay.
So it's been going since 1963. So it's politics and foci of change.
So it's got to be one of the longest running then.
It is the longest running.
We're at season 13, 14 now?
Yeah, well, of the new series.
Yeah,
if you go back to the from 1963, they're up to like season 40 or something.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's been going on for
it's
gone on for over 60 years.
Wow.
Off and on.
And do you have any favorite villains in literature?
Yeah.
Or
in literature?
Or
I thought we were going to talk about Doctor Who. I don't know. Like a favorite villain is kind of strange, isn't it? Right? I mean, again, when I was a kid, it would have been Darth Vader, right? So I had all the Star Wars figures,
right?
It would have been Darth Vader,
because we can have favorites just because they're kind of cool.
Yeah, sure.
You know,
there's always, going back to
something.
James Bond, there's Blofeld.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The doctor fights the master,
Oh.
who's the master of villainy. And I never realized it was an academic gag because the doctor has a doctorate and the master only has a master's.
Oh my
So
gosh.
apparently,
Oh my, but ching. So
I don't know, it's funny. I haven't really thought in terms of heroes and villains until I was asked to do this about a month ago. Now I've been
Okay.
thinking about sort of nothing but.
wow.
So it's not
Okay.
something I typically think about, but certainly, like I said, and I'll talk about this later. Actually,
Yeah.
I think our perception of these things as children is really important, and in some ways, it's important to preserve our attitude about heroes and villains. I'll talk about that a little later on, but
Yeah.
I
do
kinda
think
I want
it's
to get
interesting
into
that my first thought
Yeah.
when you ask if you have favorite is I'm going back to what I thought when I was a kid.
Of
Right.
course, of
Right.
course. And we talked about on the first episode, actually, all about heroes and villains and how children are taught quite explicitly
Mhm.
through
Yeah.
stories
Mhm.
who the bad guy is and who the
Mhm.
good guy is, so to speak.
Absolutely.
You know,
Big Bad Wolf,
and whether that is good or not,
Yeah.
we discussed, and also the lingering effects of that as adults, and that we
Mhm.
continue to see
Mhm.
Yeah.
the world with simplicity and black
Mhm.
and white natures
Yeah.
instead of with the nuance
Yeah.
that often it deserves.
yeah.
But also, we're going to dig into that
Yeah.
for sure.
I love that.
And
That's
Kat, what about
exciting.
what about you? Like favorite heroes and villains?
So, you know what? And I'll get into this a little bit with you as well. I feel like as queer people, there's this innate kind of sympathy for villains
Mm.
because so many of them throughout popular media have been implicitly or sometimes even explicitly
Yes.
coded. And then that's a big part of them being othered from society.
Yeah.
Or
they exist
disability
within.
coded. All those villains in
Yes.
wheelchairs, like
Oh,
Right,
that's
Blofeld,
so
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
true.
Because there was all these old timey sort of attitudes that like physical disability was like a physical manifestation of your
Right.
emotional villainy,
Right.
and that
Or God.
whichever deity
Yeah.
has punished you by making the outside match the inside, so to speak.
Right. right.
So I feel like people who are already kind of are on the fringes of society kind of flock to those kind of figures because they have some sort of understanding of what that's like.
Yes.
And if anyone knows me, they know I'm a huge Halloween person. I'm a huge fan of horror, literature, and film.
Okay.
You mean Michael Myers Halloween?
Oh, yes.
Oh, I love
Oh,
it. I love it
yes.
too.
Like
Yeah.
all things Halloween. you
Love,
Yeah.
absolutely. And literally a book I'm reading right now actually is called It Came From the Closet, Queer Reflections on Horror. And it's a lot
Okay.
of personal essays from different scholars, queer activists, journalists, all kinds of folks ruminating on horror pieces that impacted them
Wow.
and that they can see parallels through their own experiences with, which has
Wow.
been really cool.
Yeah.
But some of my favorites, 80s horror is my favorite. Just the campy, ridiculous, over the top kind
The
of
full
stuff.
CGI too. So it's like you had to make the monsters.
Yes, all
You
the
type like
practical
Freddy
stuff.
Krueger kind of?
Oh,
Yeah.
love Freddy Krueger so much. The Cenobites from Hellraiser are incredible. They're some of my favorites. That's another sort of intergalactic travel for more nefarious
Yeah.
purposes kind of
Uh-huh.
vibe.
That's right.
Catching people in their little box, things like that. And then in terms of heroes, I feel like it's something that we're conditioned
Of
through
course.
gender roles from the time that we're children.
Mhm.
I really tended to gravitate towards the female heroes and girl power like Xena Warrior Princess
Yes.
and Wonder Woman
Right.
and these kind of figures.
Right.
Because I was like, well, they're powerful and strong and they're girls. Like, that's aspirational. I
Right.
want to be like that.
Of course. Did you dress up for Halloween growing up as a kid?
One of my heroes who I dressed up as was Josie from Josie and the Pussycats. I thought she was like a musical superhero. Yeah.
Amazing. Did you dress up Halloween?
Oh, my biggest memory of Halloween was I'm a little older, so I was dressing up for Halloween when the first Star Wars came out in 1977.
okay.
So they were selling, the Kmart's were selling like very like plastic mask.
Yes.
So I had a Darth Vader one. And I went out with so I was the villain. I went out with Darth Vader, and there were all these stormtroopers, and they all said, "Well, we should follow you," And it was great because I was really not a popular kid, and so they only followed me because they didn't see who it was behind him.
Wow.
But it's like all these stormtroopers, you're gonna have to go with the Darth Vader.
That is
I have a vivid memory of that.
very fun story. Like, that's crazy. That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, and it's so fun to like get to play a villain, right? Like
Yes.
we all do theater, of course, and like it's challenging challenging. I don't even know if it's challenging. It's fun to be something you're not. It's fun to be diabolical, to be mustache twirling and all that sorts of stuff, right? But it's almost hard to play like the authentic hero who's like, it's difficult. How do you even convey that on stage? It's easy to play like a tormented individual or some sort of demented soul or something like that. So
yeah.
Yeah, I read something when I was studying Charles Dickens in my PhD. I read a really great article that I thought made a lot of sense. It said Dickens's heroes are only defined in contrast to the wild grotesqueries around them. In other words, they're very bland and boring and generic and have no qualities themselves, but they seem like they do because he contrasts them with all of these over the top monsters, so it's weird to think of the hero as kind of the person with no qualities.
Yeah.
And the villains give them the qualities. So they're almost a blank slate that's defined by what they're in opposition to. And what they're in opposition to is usually defined very, very clearly.
Absolutely.
Right?
Wow, I never even thought about that before.
No, I had never either, but it was
like you just picture Oliver, the Oliver Twist, for example.
Exactly.
And you have Nancy, she's a prostitute, but at one point she courageously, tries to stand up for the child and against everyone else around her is not. You're right. It's sort of like interesting how the ordinary person being heroic amidst a villainous landscape
in a villainous world.
In a villainous world, yeah. Do you guys think that, like, we talked a bit about this in previous podcasts too, this idea of like, it was harder to talk about a social construct of heroes and villains. Like in history, we sort of talked a bit about how it's a social construct. Whoever wins the war, so to speak, gets to sort of declare the victor and the hero. But then we were also just talking about the idea of like, is it a social construct? I mean, is it actions that we should be looking at? Is it ideas that people hold that we should be looking at? But of course, you've both studied literature and English, and so it's like we're taught stories from so young, right?
Yeah.
About and it's obvious as for children in many ways, right? Who the hero of a story is or villain is. Yeah. What are your thoughts about that?
So it's sort of been a truism for a long time in good writing. I think it's first attributed to the American journalist Paul Gallico in the early 20th century, but apparently he or someone else said, and I'm paraphrasing, as we get older, we realize there are no heroes and there are no villains. There are only human beings. So projecting this idea of growing out of the ideas of heroes and villains as being part of your trajectory of kind of intellectual and moral maturity.
Whoa.
So then it becomes kind of like a truism of good writing. Like if you put a just mustache twirling monster in your story, or if you put a holier than holy perfect hero, you're kind of a bad writer. And not only a bad writer, but like a bad thinker, an unsophisticated thinker. And I think it's interesting to sort of push back on that a little bit. I mean, I see where it comes from, but one of my favorite writers of all time is Roald Dahl. When I was a kid and still today.
Yes.
And I was teaching Roald Dahl's first half of his memoir, Boy Tales of Childhood, to my child studies class this term.
I don't know that one.
It's great. He talks a lot about growing up in the British public school where they all got caned.
Yes.
And they all got made to be the F word.
The dunce.
They had to had that public school servants, how they had to be servants of the older, younger boys were servants of the older boys, and he had to do he had to go warm up the older boys' toilet by sitting on it. All these kind of like demeaning.
Wow.
And so, but the thing that Dahl talks about these people, and he recognizes that anybody in a position of authority over children who beats them and seems to take malicious delight in beating them. A lot of his stories are these adults who kind of get off on beating these little and making them feel small and horrible and miserable. He's
some Charles Dickens stuff too.
And Dickens is a good example too. But it's like they're monsters. And you know what? It's doing the child that I used to be a disservice to complicate that.
Yeah.
They were monsters. They will always be monsters. And it's interesting. And boy, he talks about this Captain Hardcastle as one of the worst of the teachers. It would just, make it his mission to humiliate and abuse the children. And he's like, yeah, I know. The guy has just got back from World War I. He was twitching like he clearly had like active shell shock.
Yeah.
He's like, And it's like, there's a moment where you could be like, well, you know what? I feel bad for this guy. There's no villains. There's only human beings. And Roald Dahl's like, no, I don't care. I don't care what is complicated. I don't care why he beat children. He beat children, so he was a monster. I'm going to call him a monster.
Okay.
You know? And so like, there's part of that I actually, and in the opposite too, he'd say like in this school, you'd have boys who'd be, you know, miserable to the other boys, but you also have these boys who would be, you know, demonstrate acts of tremendous empathy and kindness. You know, it's like that story where the teachers like make them, you know, because someone did something wrong, they punish everyone by making them locking up their tuck boxes of all their gifts from home. They can't get to any. And he's like, one of the kids had a pet frog in his tuck box who would have died. He said, but he always made sure he saved some food and put it through the keyhole. You know what I mean? And he's like, I never forget that. And he's like, one time, you know, I got beaten really badly, you know, as 20 lashes of the cane on his behind.
Not you.
No, it's all talks about this. Yeah. And he says, you know, one of the boys said, you know what? This is outrageous. I'm going to write my father. My father's a very important one. You got a pen and paper, and he wrote and Dahl said, even at the time, I knew it wasn't going to do anything. But I never forget how kind that was, that he tried to do what he could to help me. And so I like this idea of preserving the child, in a way, the child's perception that monsters are monsters and heroes are heroes. If we over sophisticate that, I think we run into some problems, both artistically and ethically. And we do a disservice to ourselves.
Wow, you've really made me think that, like, especially fiction, especially like untrue story, like, I mean, they're true in some other sense, but they didn't happen, is what I'm saying. Like, but there's such utilitarian like goodness, what you're saying, in the sense that like it exposes and calls out monstrous, villainous behavior and calls out acts of heroism, and the child and even the adult is able to put in two camps, like goodness and like good acts and bad acts. And you're saying you wouldn't want to lose that.
I wouldn't want to lose
complicate and muddy the waters because we need that. And maybe that's the purpose of fiction. Maybe that's where fiction and reality, maybe that's where they part a bit, and that in reality, seeing people exclusively as a hero and villain, maybe that's diminishing of their humanity. But maybe you're right. Like in stories, in fiction, maybe it's like it's completely useful, and to call out acts of horrendous nature and stuff. What do you think, Kat? Like, this is
the first thing that it made me think of, to be honest, when you push back against the idea that we're all just human beings, it made me think, especially because you had brought up earlier, Charlie, that there's a big tendency in popular culture now to sort of hyperfixate on the idea of an anti-hero, like wanting to understand like the psychology and the emotional depth of these kind of characters and people. It reminds me of the adage that like past trauma or mental illness is an explanation, but not an excuse.
That's right.
For people's behavior. You can empathize with the experiences that they went through and feel bad, as you said, that happened, because people don't deserve for that to happen. Right. But that's still not an excuse for you to treat other people like crap, especially people who are in a vulnerable position that you are being entrusted to protect, just like Roald Dahl's situation. Like the fact that there's already that power imbalance of not just adult and children, but also like an active teacher, someone who is supposed to shepherd, protect, help mold the new generation, and then is just battering them. Like, that's disgusting. That's reprehensible. That's even though it's obviously horrible that he's a veteran and he's traumatized. Like, if anything, you would think, oh my God, these horrible things have happened to me. I should extend compassion the way other people should towards me. I don't know.
It's really interesting. And like, you were making me think too, Kat, that's such a great point about like, well, it's like it's useful to call it out, and then in stories, like the anti-hero, right? The sort of like, let's look at how they became villainous. But what's interesting, we all know in real life that people's sufferings and the things that they have to overcome as a child or as a young adult or whatever, it doesn't necessarily lead you to become a villain just because you went through hard stuff. And just because you had an easy life doesn't make you some heroic saint when you're older either. So then, therefore, I think what you're saying is so valid in that having a bit of a window into where someone's coming from, I guess, is nice and helpful, but it doesn't excuse current behavior, like that you were abused going to that same school and let's say in the book, and now you're a teacher there and you're just carrying on that.
Yeah.
It's no excuse.
Well,
right,
Dahl talks about how he was less he was good at sports, so he should have been really popular.
Right.
But he was less popular because he refused to take on the lower class boys to do his thing. Like, it was expected that why is he not doing what you're supposed to do, which is basically making humiliated servants and out of the lower class. He refused to participate.
Yeah, he wasn't.
It's a choice.
Continuing the cycle of abuse.
Yeah, it's a choice.
Right.
We make these choices. I think it's interesting to think about heroism and villainy as purely relational, though, right? I mean, because what we have to accept in our own lives is that for some people in the world, I hope, I have been a hero at times. And for some people, I have been a villain.
Absolutely.
I can absolutely tell you that there are people who think because of whatever reason. So it's like, am I a hero or am I a villain? Well, no,
because you didn't give him an A.
Yeah.
Right.
There's all kinds of reasons. I mean, who knows? But I know that not everyone loves me, right? And not everyone hates me. Some people think I was the most important person in their life. Some people, so we have to understand that it's not your ontological quality of who you are. It's purely relational.
Totally.
I have done things that have made me a hero to some people, and they'll always think of me that way. And I've done some things to people inadvertently, possibly, that make me villainous. So that's a complicated thing to think about.
It certainly is, and it strikes me too that it's harder to win over someone. If you've been a villain, let's say you've been a villain, all they've known of you is a villainous person. Yeah. You do one kind act, I don't think it's going to change their mind. But the opposite is true too, where you can be heroic and friendly and kind for years on end, and just the one thing,
that's right,
the pedestal is knocked over.
That's right.
I feel like people are so unwilling to offer forgiveness and compassion in our current society, especially with the rise of social media and cancel culture.
Yes.
And I believe strongly in calling out bad behavior when you see it. If you feel it's merited, I think it's important for public safety and collective knowledge, especially in the arts, unfortunately. There seems to be a rise in predatory kind of behavior and practices. So call that out. Keep your fellow performers safe. But also, like you say, people make mistakes too. So it's a really difficult sort of tightrope to walk.
Yeah. It is. Yeah. Forgiveness, even for the villain. Yeah. The one that we see to be villainous. Do you guys, have you ever read anything or watched anything? I'm just trying to think of examples in my head. I can't, where by the time you were done the story, whom you thought was the villain of the story was actually the hero, or the other way around, where that writer just really got you and you're like, whoa, your kind of mind's blown by the end. Do you have any examples of that? I'm just trying to think myself if there's any movies or, I mean, we know they exist, and it's sort of that, what do you call it? It's that, it's just a twist in the plot, right? And you're just whoa, the whole time they were the murderer that they were investigating.
The classic example of this is I just saw that wonderful Morph Arts production of Pride and Prejudice. And Mr. Darcy is the classic, right? It's because he just seems like this monster, this judgmental, mean-spirited. He says something really nasty about Elizabeth at the ball.
Yep.
And it turns out he does these wonderful acts of kindness and selflessness. And it's just sort of his, in a way, he messed up. He did say something. It's not it turned out he was heroic the whole time. Yeah. But he was a complex person. He changed. And he had complex motivations. He did some good things and bad things. So I think Mr. Darcy is the great kind of example of we're on Elizabeth's side for most of that book. They're like, God, he's a jerk. Why would you ever fall in love with this guy? And by the end, you're rooting for them to get together.
Exactly.
And you want him to be happy.
That's interesting.
I think Austen was great at that kind of thing, wasn't she?
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, you don't see the other perspective. It's sort of revealed as you go.
Yeah, and of course, at the end, he gives this big speech kind of explaining why he was the way he was. And it's not a justification for everything, actually.
No.
But it is an explanation.
Yeah, I think he has a self-awareness that some of these other kind of characters lack. Because he actually is willing, like you say, to take ownership of
that's right.
Yeah, I was being a dick to you in this situation. That's right. But I'm sorry. And if you can forgive me, let's move past it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And why?
Jane Austen's
And
so
why do
great.
we like? And there's so many other examples of like where we can't help. You brought it up earlier, there, Kat. Like sort of the anti-hero. We root for them. We cheer for this. They're doing criminal actions. They're terrible. They're a terrible person. But yet we're like but they're the protagonist for whatever reason. They've been set up to capture our imagination and our vote, so to speak, or whatever. And like we're just watching it, and we kind of want them to succeed, even though we know it's interesting how it plays on you. Like it's very entertaining to like watch an anti-hero type TV series or follow a book, and I find it like interesting and maybe like I don't know if you guys agree, but like maybe Shakespeare was good at that too, where who the heck is the hero or the villain here? Like what's going on? Because it's almost like their actions are complex in why they're doing their things, but it's hard to like just necessarily always pinpoint, whether that person is a villain or not, So
I think that, it's interesting though that it can get, we might be a culture that's not sophisticated enough for that anymore. I think the one I was thinking when you were talking was Walter White from Breaking Bad. I don't know if you watched Breaking Bad.
Yes.
Famous.
He's clearly a kind of a monstrous person.
Right.
And yet
by the end? Absolutely.
Especially by the end, but all along, but he's been adopted by kind of the right-wing brosphere, manosphere, whatever.
Manosphere.
As just a purely uncomplicated, badass, cool, we should model ourselves. Like they didn't understand the show at all.
Right.
So, I don't know, like it gets
That's interesting.
It's hard when a show makes you root.
That's right.
For someone like that.
Right.
And I love Breaking Bad. I mean, I just watched it recently.
And
I missed
his
it the first
performance is like earth-shattering.
and that's part of the problem is Bryan Cranston, in a way, is too good an actor.
Right.
For that character not to become sympathetic.
Right. And then there's these action movies. They're violent, it's basically like just like a guy getting revenge the entire movie.
And Liam Neeson and all these movies.
And it's like, but like they're the hero, they're the protagonist. But when you really think about it, that it's revenge is not necessarily something I've been taught to like applaud, kind of a thing. But yet it is fun to watch somebody get revenge. Because I think it's fiction. So maybe that's part of it.
Right.
Is there a difference like knowing it's fiction versus in real life? I don't know. But maybe not. I'm thinking even to what you were saying earlier, Adam, about this sort of like maturing out of viewing people that way. But I also like how you like brought it back to like storytelling itself. Let's not get away from the heroes and villains, but maybe in real life, like someone on their deathbed, maybe it is mature for them to no longer see people in such black and white ways. I don't know.
That's tricky.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts?
I mean, honestly, if we're taking it back to classic lit, the first thing I thought of, and you might have thought of it too, Charlie, was Victor Frankenstein.
Oh, yeah. Good one. Yeah.
Set up initially as seeming heroic, almost like godlike in his advancements to science and the way that he's able to command the room at the medical institute and demonstrate these amazing strides that he has made in science. But then when the time comes for him to actually, nurture this creation that he has brought into the world, he immediately abandons him and turns against him. And as the creature, gains sentience, learns about the world around him, is trying to develop relationships with people in society, it's really hard not to sympathize with the creature, even though he does some horrible things. He commits very extreme acts of murder.
He kills a girl because he just assumes that she'll find him ugly while she's sleeping. You remember this?
Yep.
Oh, that's why I was like, is he the first incel in world literature? So you know what I mean? Like a man who punishes a woman in advance because he thinks she's going to reject him. I mean, that literally the creature does that.
Right.
And you're sort of like, up to that point, you're like totally on the creature's side. Like, poor rejected, dejected.
Like the whole thing with the Delanceys and him becoming friends with the blind
But then
man.
he does these horrible things.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing with Elizabeth too, especially focusing on the female violence, which, I mean, I experienced that firsthand in our workshop with Frankenstein AI because I was playing that character. But he kills her just because he wants to hurt Victor. He doesn't care about her. He doesn't think about her humanity at all.
The female body as a medium to get at another man.
He just uses her as a pawn in his chess game of trying to
hurt
the person who hurt him.
No, that's such a great example because Yeah, like and then whether it be in the modern adaptation Frankenstein AI,
Yes.
Ninth Hour Theater Company, or just the original book or whatever, or the movie. It's fascinating that the creature or the one that is created in any of these versions of the story, like it's like, you made me this way.
Yeah.
Like, why didn't you make me better or different? So it's like almost has an excuse on some level that I didn't make me, you did, you know? So like, you know, like, and I guess one, like a human being could probably have that same feeling sometimes. Well, just like, I am the way I am, you know, like, well, what do you expect of me? You know, like,
I think the creature says at one point, if you cannot give me love, then I will indulge in rage. So he's actively blaming Victor. This is your fault.
Right.
You didn't love me like the father that you should have. So I'm punishing everyone because of you.
So you could say, God made me and then turned his back on me. So now I have license to be a villain in this world because God won't answer my prayers. I mean, I mean, we could all take the creature's attitude.
And so many stories do. So many actual pieces of literature and movies and all sorts of stuff, they actually do that without even sometimes explicitly, but not always explicitly. But it's sort of like this, you're given this as the person watching or reading, you're definitely given this perspective that, you know, they've been screwed over or, you know, like I'm just picturing the, you know, the scene, just any scene where it's sort of the protagonist is like kind of like a good person, sort of, you know, they're you know, everyone in the town likes them or whatever. Just, you could just write the story right now. Like, and then, you know, their loved one dies from a disease. Yeah. And suddenly they're mad at God. They abandon the, you know, they start to say, why the heck not? I'm just going to like do this now, you know?
It makes me think I'm really interested in this idea of heroism as simply an endurance of the existential pain of creation without channeling into rage. I mean, I think one of the great heroes that I've always loved, even when I was a kid, was George Bailey in It's a Wonderful Life, right? Because George Bailey, all this terrible stuff, and he sacrifices, and there's a moment where he turns his back on God and he starts lashing out at the people around him, and he thinks of killing himself. And you know, but George has been a hero. I mean, he did some things in World War II, but the movie more focuses on the fact that he just endures a lot of setbacks and hardships and sacrifices, and it doesn't make him a monster. In fact, it makes him the happiest man in town. I've always loved that story, but when you were talking, it makes me think about, well, maybe the hero is the one who gets abandoned by God, because in some ways you're always abandoned by, we all become orphans or already orphans or orphans to begin with.
Why have you forsaken
me?
Yeah.
So
you know?
like maybe the heroes are the ones who don't use that to justify a multitude of sins.
Right.
Because we all could.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Yeah.
Did you ever see the Joker movie?
Yes.
I never did, but I know it was controversial, right?
Did.
When it came out, it sort of plays on the anti-hero, does it? Or
very much. Yeah. So there was already controversy brewing before it even opened and the public got to see it because of the shootings that happened at the Dark Knight screenings all the way back in the day. Right. And the Joker had been a pivotal character in that film, very clearly as a villain. He was Batman's primary antagonist in that film. But the fact that they were going to make him the main character, I think, created some panic about the potential of a similar incident happening again, especially as mass shootings have become more prevalent in the past 30-ish years.
Right.
So that was already some concern, to the point that like police and people in plain clothes were there at cinemas with guns, surveilling the audience, making sure that no funny business was happening.
Right. So it's already loaded with this tension.
So there's already a tension there. And it's
a violent movie on top of it.
It is, but it's kind of weird because in the previous sort of iterations, I mean, Joker has evolved so much as a character throughout the Batman universe. I feel like he started very sort of whimsical and not very threatening. If you think back to like the early comic or the original show.
Oh, the Adam West TV series.
Yeah, where it's like super camp and ridiculous and like Cesar Romero has a mustache, painting over. Like, it's very unserious. That is not a scary, imposing kind of character. He's just goofy. But then with Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight, it ushered in this very gritty, more grounded in reality, almost anarchic kind of interpretation, where he has this very nihilistic point of view and he doesn't care who he takes down with him. he is just going to incite chaos because that's what brings him fulfillment in his personal.
Is it true that we sort of show how
he got there,
becomes a Joker, and like society is mean to him, or he has a lot of variety of incidents that
they do their absolute best to set this guy up as a sympathetic figure.
Right.
He is mentally ill in a society that is not providing him with the care and infrastructure that he needs to thrive. He has no romantic partner, which then created some controversy about, like, is this going to be like an incel kind of character that they're going to put up on a pedestal in the manosphere, like we talked about earlier?
Right.
He lives with a parent who is abusive towards him and is gaslighting him about his past, is feeding him all these lies that then increase the delusions that he has with his mental illness. And then when he figures out the truth of what happened to him, which is that, surprise, surprise, in this universe, he is related by blood to Batman.
Oh.
His mother
who's of course really rich.
An extramarital affair with the father. And he is like an illegitimate child of the Waynes.
So it's a Shakespearean bastard.
It is. It's like a Shakespearean tragedy.
And he's got grievance. He's got grievance.
So he gets fired from his job on top of it, and he just unravels and basically starts lashing out at people in random acts of violence, which then people kind of gravitate towards him, and he becomes inadvertently this sort of cult-like figure as a means of political resistance against this capitalist society with extreme income inequality and classism. So he doesn't even necessarily intend to make himself this counterculture anti-hero. It just kind of happens to him. And he's just happy anyone's paying attention to him.
Oh, wow.
Because he feels invisible in the society that doesn't give a shit about him.
Ooh, it sounds like it's the movie. I've never seen it, but you're describing it in a way that sounds like it touches on a lot of social commentary.
Made me quite emotional. Like, as someone who has mental health struggles, like, there's almost this fear of like, oh my God, one wrong move and I could end up just like this person. You know what I mean?
Right.
Not to the same extent that like, I'm going to go out and kill someone. You know what I mean? But that like, you can fall into this pit hole of despair and that you feel invisible and no one cares about you because you just can't have access to those resources. Like, it is pretty heart-wrenching. But then you see the horrible things that he does, and it gives you pause, obviously.
Like, wait a minute.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I mean, because obviously a lot of, I work on madness in literature is what I'm working on right now. It's like, obviously, the majority of mad people do not become homicidal. And what makes you upset?
And you mean mad as in,
well, I use mad in
deranged,
terms of mad pride. I mean, like, I don't
angry. You don't mean angry.
No, I mean mad as in madness. So there's been a move to reclaim that term.
Yes, absolutely.
So I'm kind of interested in that.
Okay.
Not stigmatizing. I've, gone mad.
Right.
I have mental health problems, this is a different, there's a medicalized valence to that.
Absolutely.
Anyway, so like, I just think, what bothers me, I'm from the States, right? And so, of course, every time there's gun violence, it's like, well, they had mental health problems. As if somehow madness makes you homicidal. It's like, most people hurt themselves in extreme moments of madness or mental health crisis.
It also seems unnecessary to say that they had mental health problems.
Well, it's just because they don't want to ban guns, So it's like, but I resent the Joker story because it makes this connection between madness and homicide, which I think is actually probably really, really rare.
I agree.
Statistically, that someone is going to become homicidal. Suicidal, yes. Homicidal?
Or helpless, even, like a lot of people, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's very strange. So I agree. I think those narratives are worrying in a way.
It's harmful
because it also makes you think if you're someone going through. I mean, I went through a massive mental health crisis back in 2021. I was just this close to being institutionalized.
Oh wow!
And I remember thinking, I'm probably going to hurt myself at some point. Yeah. But at no point did I think I'm going to go out in the street and hurt everybody else too while I'm at it. So I also think making this connection between villainy and madness is it's deeply problematic. So the Joker movie sounds cool, but it's kind of almost like in the wrong hands, like a dangerous path.
Completely agree. It reminded me a lot of Taxi Driver, which has also
totally.
become this like
Totally
manosphere kind of
because he then goes and
anthemic
saves
character.
Jodie Foster.
Yes.
Right.
And then I mean there was a sequel that flopped horribly.
Taxi
Yeah.
Driver?
No, could you imagine? No, of Joker.
I heard the one with Lady Gaga.
With Gaga, that's
I
right,
heard
yeah.
that.
So that was, I think,
Wow.
honestly, he lost some of that sympathetic appeal when he got a girlfriend. I think that was a big part of why it flopped so badly, is that people
You mean for the viewers?
Yeah.
For the viewers. Interesting.
Because the viewers want him to be rejected by women. That's part of their narrative.
That's part
that's
of his
fascinating.
violence, I feel like.
Wow.
Is this misogynistic undertone.
Well, look at Richard III. I was thinking Frankenstein's
That's who I was
creature.
thinking
Frankenstein's
of, too.
creature wasn't the first, and so is Richard, because Richard says, "What if I cannot prove a lover, I will prove a villain." Or like in his very first.
Whoa.
And his seducing Lady Anne is like this total like act of violence towards her.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know,
very clearly
proving
is
he
like,
can-
I do not want anything to do with you.
Yeah, but I can make you love and marry me,
Yep.
and then kill you. You
Yep.
know, like so it
Oh.
is this kind of act of let me see how I can reduce this woman to nothing.
Yeah.
It is disturbing if someone like with a flip of a switch changes their morals. They're like, fine, I'll do this now. And you're just like, what the heck? So in other words, were they just performing niceties leading up to that point? Like they were, it was always there, right?
Uh-huh.
And they were sort of like just getting along with society until the moment that society no longer worked for them.
Right.
Yeah.
And what do you guys think as you were sharing that about the Joker there? I was just thinking about this idea of like sort of like LARPing, like live action role play, like people imagining themselves in society as being like a hero, like you're playing hero, in whatever the context, whether it be, war, politics, whatever really. And I find that interesting too. And how many, we've talked about mass shootings, of course, as well. Like how many of these people know what they're doing is villainous, or how many of them imagine that they're doing something heroic and necessary. You are listening to Telling the Story, a podcast dedicated to exploring faith, spirituality, arts, and culture, hosted by Ninth Hour Theatre Company in Ottawa, Canada. We'll return in a moment with the rest of our discussion.
Ninth Hour Theatre Company presents Beauty Will Save the World, a brand new musical audio drama for the whole family. Embark on a seafaring adventure and thought-provoking cautionary tale about the importance of passing on beauty to the younger generation, where relationships once lost are found again, when tested to choose what they stand for and who they will stand with.
Beauty will save the world! I have felt it! I've lived it!
Laughter, action, and tears, reminding us about the sacred things that make life worth living. To listen to full episodes or exclusive behind-the-scenes content, go to beautywillsavetheworld.ca.
I want to more than just survive. I want to hope and feel alive. I want to live, truly live.
beautywillsavetheworld.ca.
And now, back to the discussion. Like, how many of these people know what they're doing is villainous, or how many of them imagine that they're doing something heroic and necessary? This idea of like, who are the villains that embrace being a villain and know they're a villain? Like the Samuel L. Jackson's character in the trilogy there. Remember that the glass and the
I
six?
never saw those. I
all
never
those
saw them.
stuff. Yeah,
so Shyamalan.
Yeah, all that. He's like a modern day super villain kind of thing, and he knows it, and he embraces the role,
Right.
which is an interesting.
And that's not his first time either. He was the same way in the film with Jamie Foxx, Django Unchained.
Oh,
he was
right.
very
That's
similar
right.
that
Yeah.
way.
Like,
as well
I'm
as
the villain,
Steven.
and therefore I'll play it. I'll be the best darn villain, right?
Yeah,
that there is.
seriously.
But then, what's more common, I find in stories, I don't know if you guys agree, but like I find what's more common in story is the villainous person thinks they're like the hero.
Right.
Yes,
They
totally.
think they're right. They think they're correct,
Right.
and all of what they're pitching to do is like necessary for like the what the common good or whatever. And it's certainly in history that's often the case too, right? So
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, I mean, certainly in the North American, European context, have used, Soviet communism as the great example of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they thought they were making society better. They turned into monsters like Mao and Stalin. So I do think we start to see more of those post-World War II, post-Soviet, because we have that idea that, Hitler thought he was going to make the world a better place. Mao and Stalin thought they were making the world a better place. I think that, obviously that... It both oversimplifies those historical figures and I think overcomplicates them somehow at the same way, like in the same hand.
Right.
It seems a convenient narrative.
Right. We were talking about that on the last podcast about it's that we just retroactively judging history.
Right.
So it's like it's clear to us,
it's clear.
now that it's all over. With but like the sort of like the sort of how you want to sometimes be subjective, but sometimes there's just an objective good cause or this party was in the wrong, and this party was in the right. It's like easy to look back.
And we also use it as an excuse not to try any major social experimentation anymore. Like, well, we can't make capitalist world a better place because look what happened with Mao and Stalin. It's sort of like now we can just shrug and like sit back and just let the world, kind of helplessness to that narrative that people have tried to do good things and it made them evil.
Right.
You know what I mean? What kind of lesson is that teaching us?
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
What's the book that you have there?
Oh, this is one of my favorite author of all time. It's actually not Roald Dahl. It's Kurt Vonnegut. And Slaughterhouse 5 is my favorite book of all time. And when I was first invited to be on this podcast and this topic, I thought of this paragraph at the beginning of Slaughterhouse 5. It was Vonnegut speaking in his author persona. It's sort of bookended. Slaughterhouse 5 is bookended. The main character is Billy Pilgrim, but Vonnegut or an author figure like Vonnegut kind of frames it.
Like a self-insert kind of
he self-inserts. So he's here talking about himself. He says, I think about my education sometimes. I went to the University of Chicago for a while after the Second World War, which is true that Vonnegut did. I was a student in the Department of Anthropology. At that time, they were teaching that there was absolutely no difference between anybody. They may be teaching that still. Another thing they taught was that nobody was ridiculous or bad or disgusting. Shortly before my father died, he said to me, you never wrote a story with a villain in it. I told him that was one of the things I learned in college after the war. So we were talking about the social construction of this idea. So Vonnegut very clearly, or maybe sort of snidely, that you can never really tell the tone with Vonnegut. Does he think they were right? Does he think they're wrong? But he seems to be saying this is kind of what anthropology departments were teaching anthropology grad students back then.
Yeah.
Again, human beings are human beings, and to put them into these categories. The thing that's interesting about that is there are all kinds of villains in Vonnegut, especially in Slaughterhouse 5.
What?
I was going to say, this is one of the most controversial books.
Really?
Like, has been banned all over the place.
Yeah, still remains banned.
Do I dare ask why?
Well, part of it is just really so like part of it was, he it's one of the, I think it is the very first book where the word mother effer appeared.
Yeah.
I mean, literally just that. So
that was already, and so they're all clutching their pearls
and
over that.
Vonnegut, of course, said, I was in the war. This is how soldiers talk. I'm sorry you can't handle it.
Yeah.
What year was it written?
Oh, 69. 69.
Okay.
But the thing is, you got this character Paul Lazzaro in there, who's wonderful, who's this little nasty little fellow who he's in the prisoner of war camp with, and he's like, anyone who wrongs him or he thinks wrongs him, he has a hit list. He said, when I get out of the war and I'm rich and famous, I'm going to pay $1,000 to have every single person on my hit list killed. Yep. So it's like, you're not going to know. One day you're going to open your door and they're going to be like, Paul Lazzaro sent you, sent me to kill you.
Revenge.
And he talks about a dog bit him or barked at him once, and so he broke up a clock and he fed and put it in steak and fed it to the dog. And it's the clock, the gears were like ate out the dog. It's like the dog ate it out its own insides.
Disgusting, diabolical
he's like a monster.
person.
So I was like, Vonnegut doesn't have villains. So I take it to be, and he has heroes too.
Right.
So I take it actually that he's being sarcastic about it. The degree he never finished, and he actually never finished his degree at University of Chicago because they were teaching this nonsense that like humans are just socially constructed and like we can't think of them to and Vonnegut coming out of World War II and just coming out of life says like, no, I need the structure of villains and heroes to organize the way I think about the world and I think about myself and my own ethical responsibility. He tells the story of Lot's wife, who's told not to look back at the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. And he does, and he says, I love that she did that. Because it was so human of her to disobey.
To be curious.
And to worry about those people. You know, those poor people who God said doesn't matter, turn away. It doesn't matter if they died. They were bad people. They did wicked things there. Right. And so like Vonnegut seems to believe that we need to be the people who will look heroically look at the things that need looking at.
Yeah.
And not just, use destiny and circumstance as an example to explain why we can't be good.
Right. If it's meant to be, I guess it is. If it happened, I guess that's meant to happen. No, I love your passion, and it does come after, like we were in previous episodes, we were talking about this need for structure, and especially the importance of stories for children. Like, well, why are stories for children so clear as into who a hero and villain is? And one of my guests, Marita, was talking about, well, the children need structure. But you're arguing adults need structure.
I don't think we've grown out of
right?
We need the structure of what's good and bad.
People go to church of various kinds of churches and look at various holy books. Exactly for that kind of guidance. And a weekly meditation on that kind of guidance.
And most of us look to tell us what's good, tell us what's true, tell us what's right. We look to others, whether it be religious leaders, politicians, our favorite news pundit or whatever the heck. I don't even know if we're consciously doing it, but we definitely feels like we need it can be a chaotic world or feel chaotic. So it's like anyone who's offering some sort of structure or some set of beliefs, it's very comforting and we need it and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like depending on your situation or how desperate you are for that kind of guidance and structure, you then misplace it onto people who really don't deserve it. Like, think of people who get involved in cults activity. So many folks on the outside just ridicule these people, offer them no understanding or compassion, are like, you guys are idiots. How could you not see that this was like predatory and some kind of scam? But
but what cults are we in right now that we don't realize? We are,
exactly.
I know.
Like, recognize the cult you're in. You know, they just wear the same sweatshirts, so it's a little more obvious. Well, we wear the same uniforms too.
Seriously.
Whether it be like cult like ideology or cult like sort of like you're part of there's a group think that we can be part of.
I mean, look at rape culture throughout history. And you talk about the anti-hero. We haven't talked yet about the Byronic hero.
I don't even know what that is. We have to talk about that.
on Lord Byron. So Byron, his heroes were often terrible, miserable, horrible people. But the one's redeeming grace they had was what? They were passionately in love with the heroine.
Exactly.
Worshipfully in love. And that redeemed every horrible thing that they did. And this has been such a perverse influence.
Like You, that TV show TV series You.
I don't know that one.
Sounds similar.
Crazy.
Villainous person, but they're just utterly passionate and obsessed with certain people, but it's crazy.
I'm reading these books. So my mother, who's like 76, and she grew up very much in sort of, the kind of rape culture of the 50s, when her reading taste developed. And she just gave me all these books. Her favorite books is this historical romance writer named Victoria Holt. Great writer, fabulous stories. But the protagonists are these like Byronic, like literally like the beginning of the book, he's this powerful, wealthy baron with a tragic backstory. It's like Byron. And and he kidnaps her and rapes her. And of course, the happy ending at the end of the novel is she realizes that he loved her all along.
It's
and
like
now he's better.
Stockholm syndrome thing.
Stockholm syndrome. And this idea of that kind of anti-hero. He's like the man, the powerful, sexy man. Look at Wuthering Heights. Heathcliff is such a despicable character. But because Heathcliff loves Catherine, we're supposed to love him despite all is forgiven. Else. And I'm like, come on. Like, if you think about a poisonous anti-hero, it's the Byronic.
So is this an era of literature?
Well, it comes out of the Romantic era.
So here's the thing. Some crossover. Lord Byron was really good friends with Mary Shelley and her husband.
That's right.
And
that's the name. You're right.
Yes.
In a way, you could think of both Victor and the creature as kinds of Byronic heroes. Yeah.
So actually, the reason why Frankenstein even happened is because he challenged the two of them who can write the best horror story.
Right. Yeah. I remember George.
So she went up against these two adult men as an 18-year-old and created science fiction.
Wow.
Power.
Yeah, fantastic story.
But
Yes.
the Brontes
Whoa.
take that Byronic hero, Rochester and Jane
Yes.
Eyre, Heathcliff and Wuthering Heights,
yeah, right.
They're all these kind of like
Brooding.
big, brooding,
Oh, yes.
powerful men with dark stories who
The Secret Garden.
Secret Garden, and the female protagonist always distrusts, probably rightly so,
Yep.
and hates, probably rightly so, at the beginning. But they learn.
Mhm.
It's sort of the Mr. Darcy story, but Mr. Darcy doesn't quite fit that.
No.
He's sort of misunderstood and
I agree.
misguided. But these guys are just horrible, monstrous people.
Oh, yeah.
And this raises the issue then again. If you are a villain to everyone in the world that you encounter, except one person who
Right.
you're a hero to.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what are you? Then?
What are you?
Are you a villain?
Yeah.
So is this a commonly known, like the Byronic
Oh, and literary
hero?
Oh,
It's like
yeah.
commonly
Yeah,
sort of
yeah,
a trope.
It's understood.
Totally.
So they're a villain, though they are the hero. They are a hero.
They
in
are an
story.
anti-hero.
They're
They are a
They are
great
the
anti-hero.
hero in their own mind.
Right.
in their
Yeah.
own.
But sadly,
mind. Wow.
also, usually a lot of these are written by women,
Yes.
and usually the heroine is a woman, and
Yes.
the arc of the story is that she learns to love and appreciate the
Yeah.
Byronic hero, usually exactly as he is. He
Mhm.
doesn't often even have to change.
Yeah.
Oh,
Very
my.
Beauty and the Beast
Very
pre-transformation.
toxic. So this is like
Would it be a 50 Shades of the Grey story?
I've never
Hey,
Where
read
he's
it
like
or
a
seen it.
he's like a wealthy, brooding man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it sounds like it.
Similar.
Yeah, I could
Sounds
see
like
that.
modern
I
day.
could see
Sounds
that,
like
to be
it.
honest. I mean,
Yeah.
especially the coercive element of like,
yeah,
I'm going to get you into a relationship, but here's this contract with all of these things on it that you need to sign if you want to continue in a relationship with me. And also,
Huh.
the dynamic is like, it involves kink, but like not in a way that is really authentic. So it's like weirdly like exploitative and spreading bad tropes about that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's crazy. It's a crazy book.
I was thinking about
Whoa.
the Byronic hero and sort
Yeah.
of culture narratives, and the fact that my mother loves these books and just sees them as just romantic.
Right.
Doesn't see any of this. And so that the idea of this is a social construct that we live, a cult that we live in.
Mhm.
It's really interesting, right? And so
Yeah.
most of us have sort of broken out of. We can now look back at that, although there's still adaptations of Wuthering Heights, and
Oh my God.
there
There was a movie that just
I
came
don't
out.
know if they
Oh,
were
right.
revisionist at all. I didn't see it, but
So yes, basically the way that Emerald Fennell approached the film is that it's Wuthering Heights the way that she imagined it as a horny teenager when
Oh.
she was
Yeah,
reading it.
right.
So it is very, very focused on like explicit sexual encounters that don't happen in the book. It's
Yeah. Oh,
basically
yeah.
fan fiction.
Okay.
I think the
Really?
most that they do physically in the book, if I remember correctly, is they hold hands and like kiss one
Yes,
time.
yeah.
Yeah. And instead now there's like full on like
Oh, wow.
BDSM situations
Wow.
happening.
Wow.
But the thing that I took the biggest umbrage with, because she still advertised it as Wuthering Heights, she didn't change the name or anything like that. Going back to Heathcliff, who is horrible.
Oh,
But-
just a terrible person.
But the thing that really gagged me about it is that Heathcliff is like one of the only explicitly POC main characters from that time period. And they cast Jacob Elordi, a white guy. And it's like super
Oh.
integral to his
Yeah.
story.
Yeah, that's right. You're
And
right.
why he
You're
is the way
right.
that he is, because he's
You're
this
right.
dark skinned,
Yes.
large man
Yes.
who doesn't fit in with this family
that's
of
funny.
white, small,
Interesting.
British, like aristocratic kind of people.
Wow.
So it's like,
Huh.
again, this
Missing the
physical manifestation of his savagery, quote unquote, is
Uh-huh.
that he's this big brown man
Right.
who is seen as like subhuman already.
Right.
But
right.
the creator wasn't horny for that when they were
No, of
teenagers.
course,
So
they're horny
let's
for
turn him
Jacob
into
Elordi.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. That's fascinating.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
That's fascinating that you, now you just opened up this can of worms of like,
That's a can of
of
worms.
like revisiting stories in modern day. But
Yeah.
of course, in our the social landscape has changed and what we think of people, the other, and as you brought up at the beginning, Kat, like queer people and how they're portrayed and stuff. So it's like fascinating how so many stories today, like, do you miss context because in the context in which it was written, there was something layered in there that today suddenly it's odd and you don't even know how to portray it, right? Like it's like it's an interesting
Like as soon as I saw the poster, it gave me huge pause because I knew exactly who those two actors were supposed to be, and I was like,
wow.
why is he white?
Right.
what is going on. Like Dev Patel was right there. You know, like what are we doing? You know what I mean?
Geez.
So
Yeah, it's
it just
fascinating.
really misses this extremely important layer of his character. And again, not excusing the disgusting things that he does, but understanding like he is a product of racism and classism.
And a
And
fiction
that
and a fictional
he takes
character.
every bit of power that he can and uses it against other people because he is disempowered himself
Right.
because of the society that he lives in.
Right, right. So it's weird that they would strip that from the character in a modern adaptation.
Yeah, especially when we're in a society that finally, rightfully so, is giving POC people their flowers and more opportunity in representation across all arts.
Wow.
That's really interesting.
Do you think they felt I mean, who knows what they were thinking, but they felt the opposite by portraying, like it would do harm to portray him that way to gay.
Right.
So they thought they were doing it a service. Like, you know,
That's a good point.
Right.
I mean, like, I wonder if maybe they considered that, like, having, like, POC person bad, white person good, like the optics of that.
They're like, oh, we can't have that.
But a lot of disability activists are upset at the overcorrection now. It's like we put a disabled person in a narrative and they have to be a saint.
Yes.
It's like, well, then, you know, like, it's ridiculous.
Right.
I can't with that.
You could be in a wheelchair and still be a villain. It's just the part
Absolutely.
now
Right.
we're overcorrecting from all those weird wheelchair villains.
Right.
Absolutely.
Most of the 20th century.
Right.
Right. So you can overcorrect and then oversimplify.
Well, that was Samuel Jackson. He was the villain, you know, wheelchair.
In the wheelchair.
Quite literally.
Yeah.
Quite literally, yes.
Yeah.
No, that is absolutely fascinating to go, because you sort of like trying to like make up for the way people were portrayed negatively through stereotypes and all these things. But in certain cases, you're bringing out this point that the author, the creator of the story, knew what they were doing.
Right.
They weren't writing a trope. They were actually trying to say something by exposing, you know, the otherness of that individual or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, from my dramaturgical background, I was taught you never treat anything in a text like it's an accident. You should always assume that it was put there by the author with intention. Your job as a dramaturg is just to investigate why.
It's funny because we're taught in literary studies, we're taught the exact opposite.
Yeah.
I can understand why, because I feel that way as an actor too.
Yeah.
But we're taught, of course, the author intentionality is not a thing. It doesn't exist. And the author, because the author is part of the cult that we all belong to and doesn't know it, the author can smuggle in all kinds of things they're not aware of at all.
Right.
This is this was the death of the author going back to Foucault in the 60s, right? Because the idea was that I think it was just to give literature English professors a job. Because think about it. Think about it. If you could just go to the author and have them tell you exactly what everything meant, then you wouldn't have a job anymore.
Exactly.
You'd just be like, well, just look at what Shakespeare said.
Yeah,
You know?
seriously.
So now we can be like, oh no, Emily Bronte thought she was doing this, but really she was doing that. There's so much literary criticism.
Oh.
So isn't it funny how dramaturgy
it was
takes
bizarre.
the intention of the author so seriously, and literary criticism tries to do away with it
it was
altogether?
bizarre, especially when I was pursuing a theater major and an English minor. Just the dichotomy of the way that lecturers would approach these
Somewhere
kind of
in
ideas.
between is the truth, I think.
Exactly.
Oh, this is so interesting.
It was a kind of a mind F, I'm not gonna lie.
But it's good though. It's good. It's good to be in multiple camps in that way. So
What I don't
not-
get,
yeah.
well, what I don't get, it's like I've written things, for example, like I had intent, like so it's like bizarre.
No, it's not to say that
ignore.
you didn't
Like,
have intent. It's to say that doesn't explain the complexity of everything you did. Because
That's true.
What if
That's
you
probably true, actually.
just thought, hey, I'm not talking about wheelchairs. I don't really care. I just he's a villainous guy. I had this idea. I put him in a wheelchair, and you have no idea that you're just succumbing to what you're indoctrinated as a kid, right?
Also true.
Oh, I got a hero who's really brooding and maybe in the past raped somebody. It's like, it has nothing to do with the fact that I read the Brontes when I was in high school. You know what I'm saying? I think it's that. It's
Interesting.
and you get into Freudian literary criticism.
God,
our dreams and a lot of art comes from our dreams and unconscious. And we don't know what any of that means any more than you
so
can.
True.
Right?
We absorb culture too.
Exactly.
Right.
So
We're products of
all that
our culture.
sneaks into the text that you intend.
Right.
So, but I can understand why on a stage and as actors and directors, we can't just hey, it's just floating around in the atmosphere. We have to make choices.
Absolutely.
We have to make choices.
And they have to be informed choices.
Yeah,
so it is a different. You're trying to do different things when you're performing a text and when you're interpreting
or analyzing a piece of literature. Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's fun when it's like unclear, like is this person a hero or a villain? Like Clopin from Hunchback of Notre Dame, hero or villain? I don't know. Like there's times where the mob was standing up for something good, like Sanctuary protecting Esmeralda. And then there were times where they were so ridiculous and villainous.
We're gonna kill Ian.
Yeah,
Like,
we're gonna kill this character here. Like,
well, if you look at a lot of like
you know.
English representations of the French Revolution, like Tale of Two Cities, right?
Yeah.
Like all those revolutionaries who, of course, had an important aim, and they're just slathering ignorant peasant monsters.
Yep.
Just, you know what I mean?
Like
Right.
subhuman,
Right,
basically.
they're subhuman, and it's like,
Whoa.
actually, I thought they were fighting for liberté, égalité, and fraternité, but of course, we're seeing this from a British,
right.
middle class perspective,
Right.
and they're at war with France.
One person's hero is one person's freedom fighter is another person's terrorist.
I mean, this is
per
cliche,
se,
but it
you know?
remains a useful thing to think about.
Absolutely.
It does.
That's wild. No, that's well, I mean, I'm sure you've read or seen things where I wonder, like, if the author, it's just to think about it, having written myself, it's like, where you intended that character to be a hero or a villain, but people like reading it are seeing like totally the opposite.
Yeah.
And that's fascinating.
I think
unintentional.
as an author, you kind of
know?
want your text to do that. You
I
want it to
agree.
live on and have a life and be, and
Right.
you know what I mean? Like adapt itself to different
to be
cultures.
questioned and discussed.
Yeah.
Like,
Who wants to write sci? If it's that set in stone, actually probably not going to last as long as
Yeah.
works that are allow for.
Right.
Interpretation.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like you say, I feel like if you are so black and white, at that point, it's kind of reductive,
Yeah.
right? Like a level of ambiguity is good.
Yeah.
Something
Well,
else that dramaturgy taught me was you never treat your audience like they're stupid.
Right.
Here's a good
So-
example of
Right.
what do we do with the intention of the author. If you look at Shylock in Merchant of
Yeah.
Venice, there's all kinds of evidence
Mhm.
that Shylock is meant to be played as a horrific, cartoonish monster.
Yes.
That's what the audiences of the globe would have wanted to see.
Totally.
But like now we can't read the text that way. And in fact, it doesn't even seem right anymore.
No.
It's
Huh.
like, I read somewhere that like at the Hath Not a Jew Eyes was supposed to get laughs from its
Oh,
original
yeah.
audience, right? Now we see it as
Whoa.
Olivier, and I saw Dustin Hoffman do it on
Yep.
stage in London.
Oh.
And now it's
Oh,
just,
wow.
it was a gorgeous performance back in
That's
the 80s.
amazing.
But it was,
Lucky.
no, it's this profound existential cry.
Yeah, he's
for
like a
understanding.
tragic
That's
figure.
not what
Yeah.
Shakespeare meant.
No.
But it'd be impossible.
He was
Oh.
supposed
probably
to be like this insane anti-Semitic
Yeah, that's right.
caricature.
Yeah, you see pictures of drawings of him at the time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's
horrible.
all. So like that's
Wow.
a text that almost became, I don't want to say better, but it became so much richer
I agree.
after it left the author's intention and the context. And you could maybe say though that Shakespeare, you could say Shakespeare put those, smuggled some of those things in so he could
Totally.
satisfy the prejudices of his time,
Yeah.
but still,
Wow.
you know what I'm saying?
That's fascinating. That's
Shylock's an
fascinating.
interesting one.
Very.
That's fascinating. Yeah, the later, it new life comes into it and stuff.
Yeah.
I really like in my very limited studies of Shakespeare. Unlike you two, I just remember being like frustrated as a teenager. Like English was my worst subject,
Really?
and I don't know if it was how it was taught.
Probably how it was
I know.
taught.
Probably.
It's very
It's probably how it's
shocking. I know.
Yeah.
Really, your reaction is perfect.
Yeah.
No, and
I
math.
could see you being like a
Yeah.
perfect
I
student in
know.
class.
I
What do you
know,
mean?
right?
Even the questions you're asking now is like,
I
I'd love to
know.
have you in my class.
I know.
Right.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I really appreciate
It's probably
that.
the teachers.
You're redeeming it for me. It was my worst subject because it was and I excelled, of course, at math and science because
Oh, wow.
it was so
Oh.
black and white.
Yeah.
The
Wow.
answers, there's answers,
Right.
there's patterns, and
Jeez.
but now I love like literature
Yeah.
and English and thrive at it and all that
But
stuff.
what was the Shakespeare you were saying?
Yeah, so anytime we studied Shakespeare, it was like I just hated it so much
Mhm.
because, and I don't know if I've recovered yet. Because it was always taught like, yeah, it was always like, well, what's his intent here? And I remember
Right.
being frustrated as a teenager, like, I don't know. He's
Yeah,
been
he's been
dead.
dead for 400 years.
Like, and there seemed to be an answer. Like, there seemed to be
Yeah,
like a
no.
correct answer.
Oh, no.
And it kind of frustrated me because I approach, as you both know, I approach literature and art with more like I want to discuss it. I want to question
Yeah.
it.
You're doing it right.
Yeah, like
Exactly.
that there would be an answer as to what Shakespeare meant. I found very frustrating, even though I believe, of course, there are things that you can glean about his intentionality,
sure,
obviously.
Sure.
But I was so frustrated by this sort of like, there is an answer and you
Yeah.
just need to figure it out.
Wrong.
You have to just figure it out. And it's like, and it was like, of course, Shakespeare's written in, an older English, and it was just mind boggling. It was rough as a teenager.
bless.
I know it was my worst subject, and I struggled, and I don't know, maybe it was the way we're doing it, and we would have to read it out loud, and not
Mhm.
everyone was a good reader, and
Yeah.
It just made it so boring and horrible. And I couldn't wait for us to watch the movie at the end of the, like bring on the Romeo and Juliet with Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah.
Like, bring it on.
That's a great one. That's a fabulous
That's
one.
know what I mean?
such a good adaptation.
Right? Like, then we did Macbeth, Hamlet, of course. And you learn a lot, right, about heroes and villains and morality in
Totally.
these plays. Like, but I remember just being like, wow, is he a hero or a villain here? Like, even Hamlet was unclear to me.
gosh.
It was unclear to me as a kid, at least. I don't know.
He is a problematic fave. He is a problematic fave.
Well, it's interesting because it's T.S. Eliot has a famous reading of Hamlet, which is it's Shakespeare's worst play because he wants to write a revenge play. And there's so many great examples of like revenge plays from that time period. Right. And he's got this guy who just like has absolutely, it's where the term objective correlative comes. There's no objective correlate for the way why Hamlet acts the way he does. Guy killed his father, you go kill him. Boom, end of story. Was he dithering around and monologuing about suicide for? You just get on with it, so Eliot famously takes Hamlet to task. But it's interesting because you would argue in defense that he's trying to complicate the Liam Neeson revenge story.
Right.
You killed my father. Now prepare to die.
Oh yeah. The Princess Bride. The Princess Bride.
Right?
Yeah, that's such a good one.
So it's but as we started the conversation by saying there are ethical problems to overcomplicating villainy, and because you then start in some ways justifying.
Well said. Well said. Perhaps we should end there. Any last thoughts for the listeners on this topic of heroes and villains? You've said many things, of course, but if you could summarize, what do you want people to sort of think about or process further after the discussion is over? We brought up so many things. I mean, you just almost capped it off with what you just said there.
I'll leave it at that. I think. Let me hear what Kat.
It was a good last statement.
That's going to be so hard to top. This is a terrible position.
I know. I'm so sorry.
No, you're so fine. I think just something that I had been ruminating on leading up to the discussion, and we'll probably continue to be thinking about with all these great insights that you provided, was just, again, like, when it comes to that desire to like understand and unpack like villainy in particular and see where it comes from, why people ended up at the places where they did and doing the things that they ended up doing. Again, like you say, like not justifying that behavior no matter how horrible the circumstances were leading up to that. Because we are in a time now where there is so much more compassion and awareness of different people's struggles and more empathy, but like, let's wield it responsibly.
There's our last thought.
Well said, and sort of goes with what Adam was saying there. This has been such a fascinating and entertaining discussion, I might add. But so much thanks for joining me, Adam, today.
Thank you. Thanks. It was a pleasure.
And thanks, Kat, as well.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This was awesome.
This has been Telling the Story, a podcast dedicated to exploring faith, spirituality, arts, and culture, hosted by Ninth Hour Theatre Company in Ottawa, Canada. Thank you for joining us for our podcast series about heroes and villains. You can listen again to this and all our podcasts through YouTube, Spotify, and directly on our website, ninthhour.ca. Be sure to like, subscribe, and follow us on social media, or you can sign up for our newsletter to be the first to receive exciting announcements, opportunities, and behind-the-scenes content about our current and future productions. We hope you'll join us again in Telling the Story.